Colchester student lathe. It's an integral part of the daily life at Big Dog Forge. Today, we'll be performing maintenance on the headstock. Here's a better view of the headstock. After moving the tool rest out of the way, we can get a much better look at the issues that have developed over the many years of service that this machine has provided. Here you can see the excessive wear on the jaws of the chuck, which hold the work. To perform this maintenance, the tool holder, or the chuck, will have to be removed fully. This will require some very specialized tools and a high degree of skill on the part of the technician. Oh my, that does not look like a specialized tool at all. Perhaps we should rethink this. What do you mean you can't find the spanner? Oh, well, hold on. Why not pop over to the blacksmith shop and we'll make one? Won't that be fun? Okay, let's get moving, shall we? You'll be able to use that hammer for its more intended purposes.
Use the hammer for my intended purposes. I don't, Okay. Alright guys, we're going to draw this wrench out here on the bench so we have a physical sort of a representation of what we're after. We're taking some measurements off of the spanner nut, and we're going to translate that into the table here with our cool little chalk pencil that we made. And we'll draw ourselves a rough outline, a guideline to follow while we're forging. 1 inch by 1.5 by 15 inches, 1045. And for what we're building here, we probably could have used mild steel. And we're going to forge this in 2 halves. We're going to do the wrench half. There'll be sort of a wrench lug in the middle, and then the handle off that. The thing's going to end up being just about 2 feet long, and the forge is only about 15-16 inches deep, so we'll have to spin it around and do one end at a time. So Floyd, the old press, is going to do a bunch of the work for us here and get us to where we need to get to for a rough shape, and then we'll move over to Scrappy the power hammer, and he'll do a lot of refining before we move on to the anvil and work on some of this detail by hand, and we'll do some cleanup by hand on the anvil as well. So the cross section of the wrench here is 1/2 inch by 1 1/4, and that'll taper down once we start forging in the details on the wrench. But the handle itself we're going to keep at 1 inch square, and then we'll knock that down into a 1 inch octagon shape. Give it 8 sides, and I would probably make it round, but I do not have a swedge for the power hammer that's 1 inch round, so we'll just hammer it into an octagon shape, and that should work out pretty well for us, and it'll probably make it look a little cleaner anyway. So I've been called out in the past for calling it a swedge rather than a swage. It's a swage, not a swedge. Well, you know what, it's in my shop and I'll call it whatever I want, so there you go. To me, it's a swedge. You can call it a swage if you want. Alright, we're on Floyd the hammer here, and we're just going to flatten the sides on this guy. We'll work it down nice and cold and knock a bunch of the scale off, and we just dress it up here on the anvil by hand, straighten everything out, get any of the little lumps and bumps out, and a little later we'll go ahead and take a little soft flappy wheel to it to clean it up real nice and pretty. Alright, it's looking pretty good so far. So the design on this thing for the handle that transitions into the wrench itself, you can see where I'm drawing that down and tapering it into the wrench body. This design is off of a large, very large spanner wrench that I saw in a like a video on an oil rig or something like that, and I've not been able to find an authentic wrench by Colchester what it looked like, so I'm just modeling this after that wrench that I saw. So I'm upsetting the tip of this thing so that I can get a little more meat up there, because I'm going to have to create an offset for the little tang, spur, dog, whatever you want to call it. The anatomy of a spanner wrench really isn't my forte, but we'll just give it a name and then somebody will yell at us for it, so it's all good. Right on. So off the far edge of the anvil, we took about 5/8 of an inch, and I put enough up there so I could shape it, drop it down, and trim a little off to dress it up. So what I'm going to do is the width of the wrench at that end will end up being 3/4 of an inch, and it will taper back to the handle and open up to 1 1/4 inches. And the body of the wrench I will keep 1/2 inch thick. There's a groove in the spanner nut on this machine that's just a little over 1/2 inch wide, so it'll fit nicely going around that groove. And it'll end up probably being just a little less, because we'll end up grinding some of the scale and surface off of it when we clean it up. So, and those are just dimensions that I randomly pulled out of my head, and they just look right. Okay, so you saw me give it a little punch mark, and I'm taking into account the radius going around the corner of the anvil. That's where I'm going to set that down on the edge of the anvil, and at the last minute I decided to pull it back about 1 inch or so. I felt that I had just a little too much hanging over the edge of the anvil there to give myself a good radius and transition. So it looks right, and I've got a chalk mark on the anvil, so from the table of the anvil up front, the soft table, back to that chalk mark is the distance that I need between the heel and the spur on this spanner wrench. So we'll get it close and do the best we can. So this came out pretty well. I like the shape. The anvil is moving around a little bit on the floor. It's anchored really well to its base, but the base is a 3-legged tripod steel thing that I've never bolted to the floor, because the minute I do, I'm going to have to move it. I live in a very tight, small shop, and I haven't had to move it out of the way in a while. But I was thinking about coming up with some sort of removable fastener, so in case I do need to move it. But alright, coming along nicely. We'll give it a good scrub up here, and we're going to cut this spur off at the proper length. And I actually kept it just a little bit long so that I could do a little grinding on it to dress it up. And we're going to take some of the scale off of this thing and clean it up a little bit, make it look a little more presentable. And we're going to use our brand new touch mark. This is the very first thing we touch marked. Did it a little bit cold. Had to hit it about 4 different times, but that's where it went, and it was the coldest part of the steel at the time. So as this cools down, we're going to go ahead and brush the rest of the light scale off, clean it up as best we can, and we'll give this 2 or 3 coats of beeswax as it cools at different intervals. I normally do this beeswax thing, and it's right on top of the anvil, and then I have to end up scraping it off, so I just threw a piece of wood up there to catch all the extra drippy beeswax. And we got it once, let it cool a little bit, and wipe it down in between coatings here, but this should give it a really nice coating, nice little sheen, and It'll get down into the pores of the iron, keep it from rusting. Should keep it looking pretty good for quite some time. Alright guys, leave me some comments, let me know what you think. And we're going to get over to the machine and give this thing a try. We'll see if she works out. Alright, there you go.
Well, how did we do? Oh, look at that. Quite nice. Now that seems to fit rather nicely, doesn't it? Isn't that better? Using the proper tool for the proper job. And now we can remove the 3-jaw chuck from the headstock. And with the proper tool, the machine offers little to no resistance at all. A job very well done. Thank you for watching this presentation by Big Dog Forge. I would ask you to like, share, and subscribe.